So my work was made up. The rents wouldn't be getting the dreaded phone call from Miss Galley. I could stay in All City, and it looked as though my school worries were over. But who were they kidding here? Nobody knows how to get slapped down by fate, but like Stephen Albert. And just when things were turning around, I got the flu. Big whoop, right? Sweat, a little barf, a little lie in bed, watch videos for a few days while the rents wait on you hand and foot. Not a bad deal overall. However, if you got a brother with leukemia who needs to avoid exposure to viruses, you can't be in the same house as your parents when you have the flu. So, just when I needed my parents the most, in my deepest hour of need and intestinal crampage, they shipped me across town to my grandma and grandpa's. Now, I love my grandpa as much as I love anybody, and my grandma is all right too. When she's not dusting around me every 5 minutes or nagging about my posture. But their house is, to put it mildly, primitive. They Do they have a VCR? No. DVD player? Nope. CD player? Negatory. Computer? No. PlayStation? It was like my parents had sent their diseased eldest child to Siberia. I spent a total of 8 days in that glorified hut, but when most but I mostly just slept the first few days away. The last 5 were a problem. How many games of Go Fish can a normal 13-year-old boy play with his grandma without suffering permanent brain damage? Hopefully, the limit is more than 17 in a row. I play with mine. How long can that same normal boy talk with his grandfather about running out of meaningful things to say? The right answer is 4. If the boy is essentially comatose for the first 3 of them. And how weird does my grandparents' house smell, by the way? Once my nose started to clear up on day 5, my nausea got even worse because that odd aroma of old pot roast mixed with mothballs was nobody's idea of stomach soother. Speaking of pot roast, I had spent the 3 months before this involuntary visit subsiding only by a combination of my wits and the microwave. You would think that this week would have had actual food prepared by a human cook. Well, would have been a welcome change. However, despite the lingering meat fumes, my grandma never fed me anything other than bananas, rice, applesauce, and toast, in consideration of my illness. Grr. It got so bad that I actually spent hours lying on the couch watching grandma knit, plotting ways to sneak into the kitchen and steal some meat. How pathetic is that? A week with the grand rents, and I was desperate enough to contemplate a vile crime of beef felony. Another few days, I would have probably gotten scurvy or goiter or something. There were some good things about that week, though. Lack of school attendance comes to mind as the biggest treat. Although I was worried about having more makeup work to do and about failing my finals. I got lots of phone calls from my mom and Jeffrey, and they even dropped stuff off to my grandparents' mailbox for me. The nicest one was a present from Jeffrey with a note my mom must have told him how to spell. Dear Stephen, I'm sorry you are so sick. I sent Matt Medic to help you get better. When he gives you a magic flu blaster shot, make sure you think how strong no flu shots, though. Dr. Perot said that's important. Also, mommy and daddy, you sound like told, I'm sorry. Also, mommy told daddy you sound like you're about to die. If you promise you will get better instead of dying, I promise I will too. Your pal, Jeffrey Alpert. Good thing he put his last name on there, huh? I also got some surprise phone calls. I guess my parents were giving everyone my grandparents' number in hopes that they would all call and save me from a slow, agonizing death by malnutrition and gin rummy. Annette called me twice. A couple of guys from school left messages, and Mr. Wantras and Miss Palma each called once. It was exceptionally strange talking on the phone with teachers. I mean, I was lying there in ratty sweatpants amidst a vast sea of soggy tissues. I couldn't have been a pretty mental picture. Mr. Watras asked me whether I was practicing, and I told him I was practicing my tissue basketball skills. Then I got all embarrassed. I mean, I know teachers are people, or at least most of them are, but you don't usually talk to them exactly like you talk to everyone else. Still, any call that got me away from watching All in the Family and Golden Girls with Grandma for the third straight evening was an A-OK call in my book. By the end of the week, I was still kind of hurt by the fact that I had been exiled. I knew exactly why it had to happen, but it still gets you when your brother is all cozied up and home with your parents, with both your parents, and you're stuck sucking down applesauce with mahjong crowds way across town. I wanted the attention from the rents, and I wanted it big time. Also, I was having these bizarre dreams about hunting down wild game with my bare hands. I had to get back into a diet with some protein and fast. So that Sunday, I bade farewell to my grandma and got into a huge cruise ship that is Grandpa's car for the ride back to my actual life. But silly me, I was forgetting that I didn't have an actual life. Thus, when I got home, the banners, flags, and tumbling cheerleaders that should have been lining the curbs to celebrate my return were notably absent. In fact, my parents and Jeffrey weren't even home. I got ritual crushing handshake from Grandpa. See you soon, muscles. Let myself in and staggered into the kitchen so I could consume some heaping quantities of life-saving meats and cheeses. Or, in the case of our barren wasteland of a refrigerator, 3/4 of a thing of yogurt and half a microwave bean burrito. Then I bopped up the computer so I could see how many people had emailed me to check whether I was okay. I had 17 new messages, which looked promising, but 11 were just spam, which would have been great if I had been seeking a cheaper mortgage or a way to lose that weight fast. I was looking for a bit of human contact and sympathy at the moment. So I went right to the 6 that were from actual people I knew, and they all said basically the same thing. Oh my God, you've been absent for 2 or 3 or 4 days. You're never absent. Is Jeffrey all right? He's in my prayers. We miss you. We all miss you. In case my friend's grammar and punctuation weren't upsetting enough, the fact that nobody thought there might be a problem with me was enough to blacken my mood pretty thoroughly. I stormed over to the couch and called one person who had gradually, without my even noticing it, become my confidant, Annette. Hey, I'm home. That's great. Are you all better? Yeah, we really missed you in jazz band this week, and every teacher asked me about you. And some girl that was pretty curious about where you were, too. Who? Oh, somebody. Annette, I'm not in the mood to be tortured right now. Would you just tell me, please? I'm not sure about this, Stephen. Your heart might not survive the strain of this if you're not fully recovered. Annette. Okay, I'll give you a hint. She wears very tight shirts, and you drool over her like a deranged monkey boy. What? What are you talking about? I don't drool over Renee like a deranged anything. But you knew what I meant right away, didn't you? On one hand, Renee continued to show if sudden interest in me. On the other hand, grrr. What was Annette's problem? We talked for a while more until she got called to dinner. Veal parm. Evidently, there still exists an abundance of animal-based food if one knew where to find it. And if one were too pathetic, forlorn, and unremarkable, one could always scrounge up some decade-old generic canned fruit cocktail from the depths of the basement pantry. I was sitting at the kitchen table alone, picking out the cherries from the various beige floaty things, which made up 93% of the fruit cocktail. When my family returned home, laughing at some private joke that they had shared during my week in lockdown, Jeffrey looked at my parents for approval, and when my mom nodded, he launched himself into my lap. I thought I'd never see you again. Why? I just had the flu. But mommy said you were, I know, dying, but I wasn't dying at all. And now I'm fine. Then my mom pepped up. Oh, Stevie, it's so great to have you back. Hey, you noticed I was gone? What was the big clue that gave it all away? Stephen Alpert. What has gotten into you? The ensuing fight was not so entertaining for anyone concerned, although Jeffrey giggled when I said that Grandma was a demented, child-starving hag. Dad may have found some truth there too, but he wasn't dumb enough to jump into that raging battle, so he just took Jeffrey off her field of combat to up to bed. Without an audience, Mom and I wound down pretty fast. Without any kind of resolution, I just kind of tapered off and walked away. Went downstairs and played on my practice pad at first. My wrists were rusty after more than a week off, but I gradually warmed up until I was playing blazingly fast and much harder than usual. When I got too tired, I stopped for a while and listened to blasting punk music on my Discman, then went down back to the pad again. I must have been down there banging away for a couple hours. I was trying to stay hidden until everyone else went up to bed so I wouldn't have to deal with anybody. Finally, I decided to coast. The coast was probably clear, so I tiptoed upstairs. Nobody was sleeping yet. As it turned out, my family hadn't necessarily been having an excellent week. I had been imagining so resentfully. I could hear noises from the bathroom upstairs, Jeffrey vomiting, my mom trying to soothe him, and I saw something shocking. Right in front of me at the kitchen table, my dad was slumped over a pile of papers with his head cradled in his hands, and he was crying.